How is it determined that a species is endangered?
This determination is a complex process that has no set of fixed criteria that can be applied consistently to all species. The known number of living members in a species is not the sole factor. A species with 1 million members known to be alive but living in only one small area could be considered endangered, whereas another species having a smaller number of members, but spread out in a broad area, would not be considered so threatened. Reproduction data: the frequency of reproduction, the average number of offspring born, the survival rate, etc. enter into such determinations. In the United States, the Director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, within the Department of the Interior, determines which species are to be considered endangered. Based on research and field data from specialists, biologists, botanists, and naturalists. According to the Endangered Species Act of 1973, a species can be listed if it is threatened by any of the following: the present or threatened destruction, modification, or curtailment of its habitat or range, utilization for commercial, sporting, scientific, or educational purposes at levels that detrimentally affect it, disease or predation, absence of regulatory mechanisms adequate to prevent the decline of a species or degradation of its habitat, other natural or man-made factors affecting its continued existence. If the species is so threatened, the director then determines the critical habitat, which is the species inhabitation areas that contain the essential physical or biological features necessary for the species preservation. The critical habitat can include non-habitation areas, which are deemed necessary for the protection of the species.
What are the main components of a bacterial cell?
The major components of a bacterial cell are the plasma membrane, cell wall, and a nuclear region containing a single, circular DNA molecule. Plasmids: small circular pieces of DNA that exist independently of the bacterial chromosome are also present in a bacterial cell. In addition, some bacteria may have flagella, which aids in movement, pili or fimbriae, which are short, hair-like appendages that help bacteria adhere to various surfaces, including the cells that they infect, or a capsule of slime around the cell wall that protects it from other microorganisms.
What is the largest constellation?
Hydra is the largest constellation, extending from Gemini to the south of Virgo. It has a recognizable long line of stars. The name Hydra is derived from the water snake monster killed by Hercules in ancient mythology.
When and what was the first animal sent into orbit?
A small female dog named Laika, aboard the Soviet Sputnik 2, launched November 3, 1957. Was the first animal sent into orbit. This event followed the successful Soviet launch on October 4, 1957, of Sputnik 1. The first man-made satellite ever placed in orbit. Laika was placed in a pressurized compartment within a capsule that weighed 1,103 pounds, 500 kilograms. After a few days in orbit, she died, and Sputnik 2 re-entered Earth's atmosphere on April 14. 1958. Some sources list the dog as a Russian Samoyed Laika named Kutyevka or Lemenchik.
Which state was the first to officially name a state bird?
In 1926, Kentucky officially named the cardinal as its state bird.
Do any mammals fly?
Bats, order Chiroptera with 986 species, are the only truly flying mammals. Although several gliding mammals are referred to as flying, such as the flying squirrel and flying lemur. The wings of bats are double membranes of skin stretching from the sides of the body to the hind legs and tail, and are actually skin extensions of the back and belly. The wing membranes are supported by the elongated fingers of the forelimbs, or arms. Nocturnal, active at night, ranging in length from 1.5 inches, 25 millimeters, to 1.3 feet, 40.6 centimeters, and living in caves or crevices. Bats inhabit most of the temperate and tropical regions of both hemispheres. The majority of species feed on insects and fruit, while some tropical species eat pollen and nectar of flowers, and insects found inside them. Moderate-sized species usually prey on small mammals, birds, lizards, and frogs, and some eat fish. But true vampire bats, 3 species, eat the blood of animals by making an incision in the animal's skin. From these bats, animals can contract rabies. Most bats do not find their way around by sight but have evolved a sonar system called echolocation, for locating solid objects. Bats emit vocal sounds through the nose or mouth while flying. These sounds, usually above the human hearing range, are reflected back as echoes. This method enables bats, when flying in darkness, to avoid solid objects and to locate the position of flying insects. Bats have the most acute sense of hearing of any land animal. Hearing frequencies as high as 120 to 210 kHz. The highest frequency humans can hear is 20 kHz.
How are the forms of cancer classified?
The over 150 different types of cancer are classified into 4 major groups. Carcinomas. 9 in 10 cancers are carcinomas, which involve the skin and skin-like membranes of the internal organs. Sarcomas involve the bones, muscles, cartilage, fat, and linings of the lungs. Abdomen, heart, central nervous system, and blood vessels. Leukemias develop in blood, bone marrow, and the spleen. Lymphomas involve the lymphatic system.
How do neurons transmit information to other neurons?
Most neurons communicate with other neurons or muscle by releasing chemicals called neurotransmitters. These transmitters influence receptors on other neurons. In a few specialized places, neurons communicate directly with other neurons via pores called gap junctions.
What is the frequency that separates animal hearing from human?
The frequency of a sound is the pitch. Frequency is expressed in hertz or hertz. Sounds are classified as infrasounds, below the human range of hearing, sonic range. Within the range of human hearing, and ultrasound, above the range of human hearing.
What are some sleep disorders?
The most common sleep disorder is insomnia. Insomnia is ongoing difficulty in falling asleep, staying asleep, or restless sleep. Technically, insomnia is a symptom of other sleep disorders. Consequently, treatment for insomnia depends on the primary cause of insomnia, which may be stress, depression, or too much caffeine or alcohol. Hypersomnia is extreme sleepiness during the day even with adequate sleep the night before. Hypersomnia has been mistakenly blamed on depression. Laziness, boredom, or other negative personality traits. Narcolepsy is characterized by falling asleep at inappropriate times. The sleep may last only a few minutes and is often preceded by a period of muscular weakness. Emotional events may trigger an episode of narcolepsy. Some individuals with narcolepsy experience a state called sleep paralysis. They wake up to find their body is paralyzed except for breathing and eye movement. In other words, the brain is awake but the body is still asleep. Sleep apnea is a breathing disorder in which an individual briefly wakes up because breathing has been interrupted and may even stop for a brief period of time. Obstructive sleep apnea, OSA, is the most common form of sleep apnea. It occurs when air cannot flow into or out of the person's nose or mouth as they breathe.
Who was Typhoid Mary?
Mary Mallon, 1855 to 1938, a cook who lived in New York City at the turn of the century. was identified as a chronic carrier of the typhoid bacilli. Immune to the disease herself. She was the cause of at least 3 deaths and 51 cases of typhoid fever. She was confined to an isolation center on North Brother Island, near the Bronx. From 1907 to 1910 and from 1914 to 1938. The New York City Health Department released her after the first confinement on the condition that she never accept employment that involved handling food. But when a later epidemic occurred at 2 places where she had worked as a cook, the authorities returned her to North Brother Island, where she remained until her death from a stroke in 1938.
What are the 3 types of primary energy that flow continuously on or to the surface of Earth?
Geothermal energy is heat contained beneath Earth's crust and brought to the surface in the form of steam or hot water. The 5 main sources of this geothermal reservoir are, dry, superheated steam from steam fields below Earth's surface; mixed hot water, wet steam, etc., from geysers, dry rocks, into which cold water is pumped to create steam; pressurized water fields of hot water and natural gas beneath ocean beds; and magma, molten rock in or near volcanoes and 5 to 30 miles 8 to 48 kilometers below Earth's crust. Most buildings in Iceland are heated by geothermal energy, and a few communities in the United States, such as Boise, Idaho, use geothermal home heating. Electric power production, industrial processing, and space heating are fed from geothermal sources. The California Geysers project is the world's largest geothermal electric generating complex, with 200 steam wells that provide some 1,300 megawatts of power. Solar radiation utilization depends on the weather, number of cloudy days, and the ability to store energy for night use. The process of collecting and storing is difficult and expensive. A solar thermal facility, Luce International Solar Thermal Plant, in the Mojave Desert currently produces 274 megawatts and is used to supplement the power needs of Los Angeles utilities companies. Japan has 4 million solar panels on roofs, and 2/3 of the houses in Israel have them. 90% of Cyprus homes do as well. Solar photovoltaic cells can generate electric current when exposed to the sun. Virtually every spacecraft and satellite since 1958 utilizes this kind of resource, too. Tidal and wave energy contain enormous amounts of energy to be harnessed. The first tidal-powered mill was built in England in 1100, another in Woodbridge, England, built in 1170, has functioned for over 800 years. The Rance River Power Station in France, in operation since 1966, was the first large tidal electric generator plant, producing 160 megawatts. A tidal station works like a hydropower dam, with its turbines spinning as the tide flows through them. Unfortunately, the tidal period of 13.5 hours causes problems. in integrating the peak use with the peak generation ability. Ocean wave energy can also be made to drive electrical generators.
What conditions result in microclimates?
Microclimates are small-scale regions where the average weather conditions are measurably different from the larger, surrounding region. Differences in temperature, precipitation, wind, or cloud cover can produce microclimates. Frequent causes of microclimates are differences in elevation, mountains that alter wind patterns, shorelines, and man-made structures, such as buildings, that can alter the wind patterns.
How is the light in fireflies produced?
The light produced by fireflies, photinus pyroles, or lightning bugs, is a kind of heatless light called bioluminescence. It is caused by a chemical reaction in which the substance luciferin undergoes oxidation when the enzyme luciferase is present. The flash is a photon of visible light that radiates when the oxidating chemicals produce a high energy state, which then revert back to their normal state. The flashing is controlled by the nervous system and takes place in special cells called photocytes. The nervous system, photocytes, and the tracheal end organs control the flashing rate. The air temperature also seems to be correlated with the flashing rate. The higher the temperature, the shorter the interval between flashes, 8 seconds at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. 18.3 degrees Celsius, and 4 seconds at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, 27.7 degrees Celsius. Scientists are uncertain as to why this flashing occurs. The rhythmic flashes could be a means of attracting prey or enabling mating fireflies to signal in heliographic codes that differ from one species to another, or they could serve as a warning signal.
What is the Kelvin temperature scale?
Temperature is the level of heat in a gas, liquid, or solid. The freezing and boiling points of water are used as standard reference levels in both the metric centigrade or Celsius, and the English system, Fahrenheit. In the metric system, the difference between freezing and boiling is divided into 100 equal intervals called degree Celsius or degree centigrade, degree C. In the English system, the intervals are divided into 180 units, with one unit called degree Fahrenheit, degree F. But temperature can be measured from absolute zero, no heat, no motion. This principle defines thermodynamic temperature and establishes a method to measure it upward. This scale of temperature is called the Kelvin temperature scale. After its inventor, William Thomson, Lord Kelvin, 1824 to 1907, who devised it in 1848. The Kelvin K has the same magnitude as the degree Celsius, the difference between freezing and boiling water is 100 degrees. But the two temperatures differ by 273.15 degrees, 0 K equals minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. Below is a comparison of the three temperatures. To convert Celsius to Kelvin, add 273.15 to the temperature, K equals C plus 273.15. To convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, subtract 32 from the temperature and multiply the difference by 5, then divide the product by 9, C equals 5/9F, 32. To convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, multiply the temperature by 1.8, then add 32, F equals 9/5C plus 32.
What are the steps in the digestive process?
There are 5 major steps in the process of digestion.
What actually happened at 3 Mile Island?
The worst commercial nuclear accident in the United States occurred at 3 Mile Island. The 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania experienced a partial meltdown of its reactor core and radiation leakage. On March 28, 1979, just after 4 a.m., a water pump in the secondary cooling system of the Unit 2 pressurized water reactor failed. A relief valve jammed open, flooding the containment vessel with radioactive water. A backup system for pumping water was down for maintenance. Temperatures inside the reactor core rose, fuel rods ruptured, and a partial, 52%, meltdown occurred. Because the radioactive uranium core was almost entirely uncovered by coolant for 40 minutes. The thick steel reinforced containment building prevented nearly all the radiation from escaping. The amount of radiation released into the atmosphere was 1/1,000,000th of that at Chernobyl. However, if the coolant had not been replaced, the molten fuel would have penetrated the reactor containment vessel, where it would have come into contact with the water, causing a steam explosion, breaching the reactor dome, and leading to radioactive contamination of the area similar to the Chernobyl accident.
What is the composition of Earth's atmosphere?
Earth's atmosphere, apart from water vapor and pollutants, is composed of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and less than 1% each of argon and carbon dioxide. There are also traces of hydrogen, neon, helium, krypton, xenon, methane, and ozone. Earth's original atmosphere was probably composed of ammonia and methane. 20 million years ago the air started to contain a broader variety of elements. The atmosphere weighs approximately 5 million billion tons. It exerts an average of 14.7 pounds per square inch, psi, of pressure on the surface of the planet.
Is there a cat that lives in the desert?
The sand cat, Felis margarita, is the only member of the cat family tied directly to desert regions. Found in North Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and western Pakistan, the sand cat has adapted to extremely arid desert areas. The padding on the soles of its feet is well suited to the loose sandy soil. And it can live without drinking freestanding water. Having sandy or grayish ochre dense fur, its body length is 17.5 to 22 inches, 45 to 57 centimeters. Mainly nocturnal, active at night, the cat feeds on rodents, hares, birds, and reptiles. The Chinese desert cat, Felis biati, does not live in the desert as its name implies, but inhabits the steppe country and mountains. Likewise, the Asiatic desert cat, Felis sylvestris ornata, inhabits the open plains of India, Pakistan, Iran, and Asiatic Russia.
What is the difference between human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, and AIDS?
The term AIDS applies to the most advanced stages of HIV infection. The Center for Disease Control, CDC, definition of AIDS includes all HIV infected people who have fewer than 200 CD41 T cells per cubic millimeter of blood. Healthy adults usually have CD41 T cell counts of 1000 or more. The definition also includes 26 clinical conditions. Mostly opportunistic infections, that affect people with advanced HIV disease.
What feature of liverworts hints to their name?
Liverworts were named during the Middle Ages, when herbalists followed the theoretical approach known as the doctrine of signatures. The core philosophy of this perspective was that if a plant part resembled a part of the human body, it would be useful in treating ailments of that organ or part. The thallus of thalloid liverworts resembles a lobed liver. Therefore, in line with the philosophy presented by the doctrine, the plant was used to treat liver ailments. The word liver was combined with wort, which means herb, to form the name liverwort.
What food odors do dogs like best?
In a study of different foods, researchers found that liver and chicken ranked higher than everything else, including hamburgers, fish, vegetables, and fresh fruit.
Did the White House ever have solar panels?
Yes, during President Jimmy Carter's 1924 administration. 32 solar panels were installed on the roof of the White House above the Oval Office on June 30, 1979. The panels were subsequently removed in 1986 during President Ronald Reagan's 1911 to 2004 administration.
What is the difference between RAM and ROM?
Random access memory, RAM, is where programs and the systems that run the computer are stored until the CPU can access them. RAM may be read and altered by the user. In general, the more RAM, the faster the computer. RAM holds data only when the current is onto the computer. Newer computers have DDR, double data rate, memory chips. Read-only memory, ROM, is memory that can be read, but not altered by the user. ROM stores information, such as operating programs, even when the computer is switched off.
If you melted all the ice in the world, how high would the oceans rise?
If you melted all the ice in the world, some 5.5 million cubic miles, 23 million cubic kilometers. In all, the oceans would rise 1.7% or about 180 feet, 60 meters. Which is enough, for example, for 20 stories of the Empire State Building to be underwater.
Is Chicago the windiest city?
Dodge City, Kansas, with an average wind speed of 13.9 miles per hour. 22.4 kilometers per hour, ranks number 1 as the windiest city. By comparison, the average wind speed in Chicago is only 10.3 miles per hour, 16.6 kilometers per hour. The highest surface wind ever recorded was on Mount Washington, New Hampshire, at an elevation of 6,288 feet, 1.9 kilometers. On April 12, 1934, its wind speed was 231 miles, 371.7 kilometers per hour, and its average wind speed was 35 miles, 56.3 kilometers per hour. The windiest place on Earth is Antarctica, where winds can gust up to 200 miles per hour. 322 kilometers per hour, which is twice as hard as in an average hurricane.
What is the largest organ in the human body?
The largest and heaviest human organ is the skin, with a total surface area of about 20 square feet. 1.9 square meters, for an average person, or 25 square feet, 2.3 square meters, for a large person. It weighs 5.6 pounds, 2.7 kilograms, on average representing 4% of the average weight of the human body. Although generally it is not thought of as an organ, anatomically it is an organ.
How long will fossil fuel reserves last?
Determining how long fossil fuel reserves, the non-renewable sources of energy, will last is dependent on production rates and the rate of consumption. Other factors complicating the determination of how long fossil fuel reserves will last is whether additional supplies will be discovered. The economics of recovery of fossil fuels, and the growth of renewable sources of energy. Different models have been proposed, but researchers are now predicting that oil and gas reserves will last another 35 and 37 years, respectively. Coal reserves are predicted to last 107 years. Based on this model, coal will be the only fossil fuel available after 2042 and would last until 2112.
Have wind speeds during tornadoes been accurately measured?
No, tornado wind speeds have been scientifically estimated using Doppler radar and video observations. But there have been no successful attempts to physically measure wind speeds using an anemometer. Many severe tornadoes will destroy an anemometer before it records the wind speed during a tornado. Furthermore, they may occur in many random locations without equipment in place to measure wind speed.
What is the best soil pH for growing plants?
Nutrients such as phosphorus, calcium, potassium, and magnesium are most available to plants when the soil pH is between 6.0 and 7.5. Under highly acidic, low pH conditions, these nutrients become insoluble and relatively unavailable for uptake by plants. However, some plants, such as rhododendrons, grow better in acidic soils. High soil pH can also decrease the availability of nutrients. If the soil is more alkaline than pH 8, phosphorus, iron, and many trace elements become insoluble and unavailable for plant uptake.
How long do chemicals from marijuana stay in the body?
Hen marijuana is smoked, tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. Its active ingredient is absorbed primarily in the fat tissues. The body transforms the THC into metabolites, which can be detected by urine tests for up to a week. Tests involving radioactively labeled THC have traced the metabolites for up to a month. The retention of labeled THC in humans is about 40% at 3 days and 30% at 1 week. Schedule V low potential for abuse. May contain lamethyl, Parapectalin, small amounts of narcotics. Regulated, Charicol, Robitussin, in the same manner as non-scheduled prescription drugs.
Which element has the highest density?
Either osmium or iridium is the element with the highest density, however. Scientists have yet to gather enough conclusive data to choose between the two. When traditional methods of measurement are employed, osmium generally appears to be the densest element. Yet, when calculations are made based upon the space lattice, which may be a more reliable method given the nature of these elements, the density of iridium is 22.65 compared to 22.61 for osmium.
Who was the founder of modern medicine?
Thomas Sydenham, 1624 to 1689, who was also called the English Hippocrates, reintroduced the Hippocratic method of accurate observation at the bedside, and recording of observations. To build up a general clinical description of individual diseases. He is also considered one of the founders of epidemiology and was among the first to describe scarlet fever and Sydenham's chorea.
Why does hair turn gray as part of the aging process?
The pigment in hair, as well as in the skin, is called melanin. There are two types of melanin, eumelanin, which is dark brown or black, and pheomelanin, which is reddish yellow. Both are made by a type of cell called a melanocyte that resides in the hair bulb and along the bottom of the outer layer of skin, or epidermis. The melanocytes pass this pigment to adjoining epidermal cells called keratinocytes, which produce the protein keratin, hair's chief component. When the keratinocytes undergo their scheduled death, they retain the melanin. Thus, the pigment that is visible in the hair and in the skin lies in these dead keratinocyte bodies. Gray hair is simply hair with less melanin, and white hair has no melanin at all. It remains unclear as to how hair loses its pigment. In the early stages of graying, the melanocytes are still present but inactive. Later they seem to decrease in number. Genes control this lack of deposition of melanin. In some families, many members' hair turns white while they are still in their 20s. Generally speaking, among Caucasians 50% are gray by age 50. There is, however, wide variation.
When did the first commercial nuclear power plant in the United States become operational?
The first commercial electricity generating nuclear power plant in the United States was located in Shippingport, Pennsylvania. It became operational on December 2, 1957, supplying energy to the Pittsburgh area. It continued to supply power until 1982. Although the Shippingport power plant was the first large-scale nuclear power plant in the United States, it was not the first civilian power plant. A few months earlier, in July 1957, the Santa Susana sodium reactor experimental in California began providing power.
Who verified the Oparin-Haldane hypothesis?
In 1953, the year that Watson and Crick published their famous paper on DNA structure. Stanley Miller, 1930 to 2007, a graduate student in the lab of Harold Urey. 1893 to 1981, built an apparatus that mimicked what was then thought to be the atmosphere of early Earth. A reducing atmosphere containing methane, ammonia, and hydrogen. In the closed chamber, Miller boiled water, then exposed it to electric shocks and then cooled it. After the apparatus ran for a period of days, Miller tested the water and found several amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. Eventually, scientists replicating the Miller-Urey experiment were able to generate other types of amino acids as well as nucleotides, basic units of DNA, and sugars.
What is a Foucault pendulum?
An instrument devised by Jean Foucault, 1819 to 1868, in 1851 to prove that Earth rotates on an axis. The pendulum consisted of a heavy ball suspended by a very long fine wire. Sand beneath the pendulum recorded the plane of rotation of the pendulum over time. A reconstruction of Foucault's experiment is located in Portland, Oregon, at its convention center. It swings from a cable 90 feet, 27.4 meters, long, making it the longest pendulum in the world.
What is the idea behind open source software?
Open source software is computer software where the code, the rules governing its operation, is available for users to modify. This is in contrast to proprietary code, where the software vendor veils the code so users cannot view and, hence, manipulate, or steal it. The software termed open source is not necessarily free, that is, without charge. Authors can charge for its use, usually only nominal fees. According to the Free Software Foundation, free software is a matter of liberty, not price. To understand the concept, you should think of free as in free speech, not as in free food. Free software is a matter of the user's freedom to run, copy, distribute, study, change, and improve the software. Despite this statement, most of it is available without charge. Open source software is usually protected under the notion of copyleft, instead of copyright law. Copyleft does not mean releasing material to the public domain. Nor does it mean near absolute prohibition from copying, like the federal copyright law. Instead, according to the Free Software Foundation, copyleft is a form of protection guaranteeing that whoever redistributes software, whether modified or not, must pass along the freedom to further copy and share it. Open source has evolved into a movement of sharing, cooperation, and mutual innovation. Ideas that many believe are necessary in today's cutthroat corporatization of software.
Which galaxy is closest to us?
The Andromeda Galaxy is the galaxy closest to the Milky Way galaxy, where Earth is located. It is estimated to be 2.2 million light-years away from Earth. Bigger than the Milky Way, Andromeda is a spiral-shaped galaxy that is also the brightest in Earth's sky.
How does tennis elbow differ from golfer's elbow?
Tennis elbow and golfer's elbow are both injuries caused by overuse of the muscles of the forearm. Tennis elbow, also called lateral epicondylitis, affects the muscles of the forearm, which attach to the bony prominence on the outside of the elbow. Golfer's elbow, also called medial epicondylitis, affects the muscles of the forearm that attach to the inside of the elbow.
Was Napoleon poisoned?
The most common opinion today is that Napoleon Bonaparte, 1769 to 1821, Emperor of France from 1804 to 1815, died of a cancerous, perforated stomach. A significant minority of doctors and historians have made other claims, ranging from various diseases to benign neglect to outright homicide. A Swedish toxicologist, Sten Forshovbod, 1903 to 1985, advanced the theory that Napoleon died from arsenic administered by an agent of the French royalists who was planted in Napoleon's household during his final exile on the island of St. Helena.
What is a gland?
Glands are secretory cells or multicellular structures that are derived from epithelium and often stay connected to it. They are specialized for the synthesis, storage, and secretion of chemical substances. Glands are classified as either endocrine or exocrine glands. Endocrine glands do not have ducts, but release their secretions directly into the extracellular fluid. The secretions pass into capillaries and are then transported by the bloodstream to target cells elsewhere in the body. Exocrine glands have ducts that carry the secretions to some body surface. Mucus, saliva, perspiration, earwax, oil, milk, and digestive enzymes are examples of exocrine secretions.
What is unique about the rotation of the planet Venus?
Unlike Earth and most of the other planets, Venus rotates in a retrograde, or opposite, direction with relation to its orbital motion around the Sun. It rotates so slowly that only 2 sunrises and sunsets occur each Venusian year. Uranus's rotation is also retrograde.
When were chromosomes first observed?
Chromosomes were observed as early as 1872, when Edmund Russo, 1841 to 1897, described seeing items that resembled small rods during cell division. He named the rod stabchen. Edouard van Beneden, 1846 to 1910, used the term batonet in 1875 to describe nuclear duplication. The following year, 1876, Edouard Balbiani, 1825 to 1899, described that at the time of cell division the nucleus dissolved into a collection of batonets itroids, narrow little rods. Walther Fleming, 1843-1905. Discovered that the chromosomal threads or phaeton split longitudinally during mitosis.
What is ultrasound?
Ultrasound, also called sonography, is another type of 3D computerized imaging. Using brief pulses of ultra-high frequency acoustic waves, lasting 0.01 second, it can produce a sonar map of the imaged object. The technique is similar to the echolocation used by bats, whales, and dolphins. By measuring the echo waves, it is possible to determine the size, shape, location, and consistency, whether it is solid, fluid-filled, or both, of an object. It is frequently used in obstetrics because unlike X-rays, it does not use ionizing radiation to produce an image. It causes no health problems for the mother or unborn fetus and may be repeated as often as necessary.
What is the difference between osteopathic medicine, homeopathy, naturopathy, and chiropractic medicine?
Osteopathic medicine was developed in the United States by Dr. Andrew Taylor Still, 1828 to 1917. It recognizes the role of the musculoskeletal system in healthy function of the human body. The physician is fully licensed and uses manipulation techniques, as well as traditional diagnostic and therapeutic procedures. Osteopathy is practiced as part of conventional Western medicine. Developed by a German physician, Christian F. S. Hahnemann, 1755–1843. The therapy of homeopathy treats patients with small doses of 2,000 substances. Based on the principle that like cures like, the medicine used is one that produces the same symptoms in a healthy person that the disease is producing in the sick person. Chiropractic medicine is based on the belief that disease results from the lack of normal nerve function. Relying on physical manipulation and adjustment of the spine for therapy, rather than on drugs or surgery, this therapy, used by the ancient Egyptians, Chinese, and Hindus, was rediscovered in 1895 by American osteopath Daniel David Palmer, 1845–1913. Naturopathy is based on the principle that disease is due to the accumulation of waste products and toxins in the body. Practitioners believe that health is maintained by avoiding anything artificial or unnatural in the diet or in the environment.
(108) Which are the hottest and coldest planets?
The hottest planet is Venus. It has a surface temperature of 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 480 degrees Celsius. The carbon dioxide of Venus's atmosphere traps the heat, producing very high surface temperatures. Neptune is the coldest planet with temperatures of -367 degrees Fahrenheit, -224 degrees Celsius, or 51.7 degree Kelvin.
How much water does an average sponge circulate during a day?
A sponge that is 4 inches, 10 centimeters, tall and 0.4 inch, 1 centimeter in diameter pumps about 23 quarts, 22.5 liter, of water through its body in one day. To obtain enough food to grow by 3 ounces, 100 gram. A sponge must filter about 275 gallons, 1,000 kilograms, of seawater.
What is the composition of U.S. coins currently in circulation?
During colonial times, coins were composed of gold, silver, and copper. The U.S. Mint produced gold coins until 1933, during the Great Depression. The silver in quarters and dimes was replaced in 1966. Today, nickels, dimes, quarters, and half dollars are composed of copper and nickel. They have a copper core and an outer layer composed of a 75% copper, 25% nickel alloy. Pennies, once copper coins, are now composed of copper-plated zinc.
What is the purpose of a trade secret?
A trade secret is information a company chooses to protect from its competitors. Perhaps the most famous trade secret is the formula for Coca-Cola.
Why is evolution a theory?
A scientific theory is an explanation of observed phenomena that is supported by the available scientific data. The term theory is used as an indication that the explanation will be modified as new data becomes available. For example, the Darwin-Wallace theory was proposed prior to the discovery of the molecular nature of genetics but has since been expanded to encompass that information as well.
What was the historical significance of hemp?
During the early years of colonial America, hemp, Agave cisalina, was as common as cotton is now. It was an easy crop to grow, requiring little water, no fertilizers, and no pesticides. The fabric looks and feels like linen. It was used for uniforms of soldiers, paper. The first two drafts of the Declaration of Independence were written on hemp paper, and an all-purpose fabric. Betsy Ross's flag was made of red, white, and blue hemp.
Who developed psychodrama?
Psychodrama was developed by Jacob L. Moreno, 1892–1974, a psychiatrist born in Romania, who lived and practiced in Vienna until he came to the United States in 1927. He soon began to conduct psychodrama sessions and founded a psychodrama institute in Beacon, New York, in 1934. Largely because of Moreno's efforts, it is practiced worldwide. Psychodrama is defined as a method of group psychotherapy in which personality makeup, interpersonal relationships, conflicts, and emotional problems are explored by means of special dramatic methods.
How does a meteorite differ from a meteoroid?
A meteorite is a natural object of extraterrestrial origin that survives passage through Earth's atmosphere and hits Earth's surface. A meteorite is often confused with a meteoroid or a meteor. A meteoroid is a small object in outer space, generally less than 30 feet, 10 meters, in diameter. A meteor, sometimes called a shooting star, is the flash of light seen when an object passes through Earth's atmosphere and burns as a result of heating caused by friction. A meteoroid becomes a meteor when it enters Earth's atmosphere. If any portion of a meteoroid lands on Earth, it is a meteorite. There are three kinds of meteorites. Irons contain 85% to 95% iron, the rest of their mass is mostly nickel. Stony irons are relatively rare meteorites composed of about 50% iron and 50% silicates.
What color is an iceberg?
Most icebergs are blue and white. However, 1 in 1,000 icebergs in Antarctica is emerald green. They are only found in Antarctica because the northern hemisphere is not cold enough. These icebergs form when sea water freezes to the bottom of floating ice shelves. The ice looks green from the combination of yellow and blue. Yellow is from the yellowish-brown remains of dead plankton dissolved in seawater and trapped in the ice. Blue is present because although ices reflects virtually all the wavelengths of visible light, it absorbs slightly more red wavelengths than blue.
What is the most popular state insect?
The honeybee is by far the most popular state insect, having been selected by 17 states, Arkansas, Georgia, Kansas, Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Jersey, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Utah, nicknamed the Beehive State, Tennessee, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wisconsin.
What is high-speed steel?
High-speed steel is a general name for high alloy steels that retain their hardness at very high temperatures and are used for metal cutting tools. All high-speed steels are based on either tungsten or molybdenum, or both, as the primary heat-resisting alloying element. These steels require a special heat so that their unique properties can be fully realized. The manufacturing process consists of heating the steel to a temperature of 2150 degrees Fahrenheit to 2400 degrees Fahrenheit. 1175 degrees Celsius to 1315 degrees Celsius, to obtain solution of a substantial percentage of the alloy carbides, quenching to room temperature. Tempering at 1000 degrees Fahrenheit to 1150 degrees Fahrenheit, 535 degrees Celsius to 620 degrees Celsius, and again cooling to room temperature.
How are anabolic steroids harmful to those who use them?
Anabolic, protein building. Steroids are drugs that mimic the effects of testosterone and other male sex hormones. They can build muscle tissue, strengthen bone, and speed muscle recovery following exercise or injury. They are sometimes prescribed to treat osteoporosis in postmenopausal women and some types of anemia. Some athletes use anabolic steroids to build muscle strength and bulk and to allow a more rigorous training schedule. Weightlifters, field event athletes, and bodybuilders are most likely to use anabolic steroids. The drugs are banned from most organized competitions because of the dangers they pose to health and to prevent an unfair advantage. Adverse effects include hypertension, acne, edema, and damage to the liver, the heart, and adrenal glands. Psychiatric symptoms can include hallucinations, paranoid delusions, and manic episodes. In men, anabolic steroids can cause infertility, impotence, and premature balding. Women can develop masculine characteristics, such as excessive hair growth. Male pattern balding, disruption of menstruation, and deepening of the voice. Children and adolescents can develop problems in growing bones, leading to short stature.
What first aid remedies may be used for bee stings?
If a person is allergic to bee stings, he or she should seek professional medical care immediately. For persons not allergic to bee stings, the following steps may be taken. The stinger should be removed by scraping it with a knife. A long fingernail, or a credit card, rather than by trying to pull it out. A wet aspirin may be rubbed on the area of the sting to help neutralize some of the inflammatory agents in the venom. Unless the person is allergic or sensitive to aspirin taken by mouth. A paste made of meat tenderizer, or another product that contains papain, mixed with water will relieve the pain. Adults may take an antihistamine along with a mild pain reliever such as aspirin, ibuprofen, or acetaminophen.
Where is the circle of fire?
The belt of volcanoes bordering the Pacific Ocean is often called the Circle of Fire or the Ring of Fire. Earth's crust is composed of 15 pieces, called plates, which float on the partially molten layer below them. Most volcanoes, earthquakes, and mountain building occur along the unstable plate boundaries. The circle of fire marks the boundary between the plate underlying the Pacific Ocean and the surrounding plates. It runs up the west coast of the Americas from Chile to Alaska, through the Andes Mountains, Central America, Mexico, California, the Cascade Mountains, and the Aleutian Islands. Then down the east coast of Asia from Siberia to New Zealand, through Kamchatka, the Kuril Islands, Japan, the Philippines, Celebes, New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, New Caledonia, and New Zealand. Of the 850 active volcanoes in the world, over 75% of them are part of the Circle of Fire.
How fast does a hummingbird fly and how far does the hummingbird migrate?
Hummingbirds fly at speeds up to 71 miles, 80 kilometers, per hour. The longest migratory flight of a hummingbird documented to date is the flight of a rufous hummingbird from Ramsey Canyon, Arizona, to near Mt. St. Helens, Washington, a distance of 1,414 miles, 2,277 kilometers. Bird banding studies are now in progress to verify that a few rufous hummingbirds do make a 11,000 to 11,500 mile. 17,699 to 18,503 kilometer. Journey along a super Great Basin high route, a circuit that could take a year to complete. Hummingbird studies, however, are difficult to complete because so few banded birds are recovered.
What are some common top-level domain, TLD, suffixes?
Common top-level domain suffixes are, top-level domain, TLD, meaning of the suffix. Commercial organization, business, or company. Edu educational institution.org nonprofit organization. Sometimes used by other sites, .gov US government agency ILUS military agency ET network organizations.